Hollywood called Steve McQueen a greedy diva. They said he was losing his mind. They said he was a criminal. But when one studio executive secretly followed McQueen's truck, expecting to bust him in a black market scheme, what he discovered in that reform school parking lot would haunt him for the rest of his life, because the king of cool wasn't hoarding those supplies. He was giving them away. And the reason why would change everything Hollywood thought they knew about Steve McQueen. It was 1965, and Steve McQueen was untouchable. The Great Escape had made him the biggest action star on the planet. The Cincinnati Kid was about to cement his legend. Every studio in Hollywood was throwing money at him, desperate to get the king of cool in their pictures. McQueen could write his own ticket. He could demand anything, and that's exactly what he started doing. The trouble began with a simple contract negotiation. McQueen's agent walked into MGM with a list of demands that made the executive's jaws drop. The usual stuff was there: the $1 million salary, the private trailer, the approval over directors. But then came the weird requests. McQueen wanted 500 electric razors, brand new, top-of-the-line Gillette safety razors. He wanted 200 pairs of Levi's 501 jeans, all size 32 waist. He wanted cases of soap, toothpaste, and shampoo. Enough toiletries to stock a pharmacy. The studio executives stared at the contract writer in disbelief. What the hell did Steve McQueen need with 500 razors? MGM's head of production, Robert Whiteman, threw the contract across his desk. "He's lost his damn mind," Whiteman said to his assistant. "Nobody needs this much stuff. Nobody." But McQueen wasn't negotiating. These items were non-negotiable. If the studio wanted Steve McQueen, they had to provide the razors, the jeans, and the toiletries. No exceptions, no substitutions. Take it or leave it. MGM took it. They had no choice. McQueen was box office gold, and box office gold makes its own rules. But behind closed doors, the whisper started. What was Steve McQueen really up to? Why would America's coolest actor need hundreds of razors unless he was planning something shady? The rumors spread like wildfire through Hollywood. Some executives thought McQueen was having a mental breakdown. Maybe the pressure of fame had finally gotten to him, and he was hoarding supplies like some paranoid survivalist. Others had a darker theory. Maybe McQueen was selling the stuff on the black market. Maybe he was using his star power to get free merchandise, then flipping it for cash. After all, McQueen had grown up poor. Maybe old habits die hard. The whispers reached Paramount Studios when McQueen's next film deal came up. The same bizarre demands appeared in his contract: more razors, more jeans, more toiletries. This time, the studio's head of security, a former FBI agent named Thomas Bradley, decided he'd had enough. "I'm going to find out what this son of a bitch is really doing," Bradley told his boss, "and when I catch him, we'll have enough dirt to destroy his career." Bradley put McQueen under surveillance. Not official surveillance, nothing that could get the studio in legal trouble, just careful observation. McQueen's house in the Hollywood Hills was watched. His favorite restaurants were monitored. His garage, where he kept his collection of motorcycles and race cars, was staked out from a distance. For weeks, Bradley's investigation turned up nothing suspicious. McQueen lived quietly. He worked on his cars. He rode his motorcycles. He went to dinner with his wife, Nayli. He seemed like a normal guy who happened to be ridiculously famous. But the supplies kept arriving at his house. Truck after truck, delivering boxes of razors, cases of jeans, crates of toiletries. And they all went into McQueen's garage. Then, on a Tuesday morning in late November 1965, Bradley got the break he was waiting for. McQueen loaded his pickup truck with boxes from the garage. Not just a few boxes, The truck was packed to capacity, loaded down with what looked like hundreds of pounds of merchandise. This was it. This was the moment Bradley would catch McQueen red-handed. Bradley followed at a distance as McQueen drove out of Hollywood. The truck headed east, away from the studios, away from the fancy neighborhoods where stars lived and played. They drove through downtown Los Angeles, through working-class neighborhoods, past industrial areas. Bradley's excitement grew with every mile. Where was McQueen taking this stuff? Who was he meeting? What kind of black market operation was the king of cool running? The truck kept driving, past the city limits, into the San Fernando Valley, past middle-class suburbs and strip malls. Bradley stayed far enough back to avoid detection, but close enough to keep the truck in sight. His hands gripped the steering wheel tighter as they drove deeper into unfamiliar territory. This was taking much longer than he'd expected. Whatever McQueen was up to, it was big. Finally, after nearly an hour of driving, the truck turned into a long driveway. Bradley pulled over and watched from across the street as McQueen drove toward a cluster of buildings surrounded by chain-link fencing. Bradley squinted at the sign by the entrance. Boys' Republic. It was some kind of school, but not a regular school. The fencing, the institutional buildings, the isolated location. This looked like a reform school. Bradley's mind raced. What was Steve McQueen doing at a reform school? Was this some kind of cover for his operation? Maybe he was using the school as a front, bribing officials to look the other way while he conducted his business. Bradley crept closer, parking behind a line of trees where he could watch without being seen. McQueen parked his truck near the main building and got out. He was dressed casually, jeans and a work shirt, looking nothing like the movie star the world knew. He walked to the back of the truck and started unloading boxes. That's when Bradley saw something that confused him. McQueen wasn't meeting with anyone suspicious. There were no shady characters waiting to buy stolen merchandise. Instead, there were kids, teenage boys, maybe 15 or 16 years old, walking over to help McQueen with the boxes. Bradley watched in stunned silence as McQueen handed out the razors to the boys, not selling them, giving them away. Each kid got a razor, a bar of soap, a tube of toothpaste. The jeans came next. McQueen held up each pair, eyeballing the boys to see who would fit what size. The boys were smiling, laughing, talking to McQueen like he was their favorite uncle. Not some distant movie star, but it was what McQueen said to the boys that stopped Bradley cold. He was close enough now to hear the conversation, and what he heard shattered every assumption he'd made about Steve McQueen. "You guys take care of yourselves, okay?" McQueen said, his voice gentle, paternal. "I know it's tough in here. I know you feel like nobody cares about you, but I want you to know that somebody does care. I was once just like you." One of the boys, a tall, skinny kid with serious eyes, looked up at McQueen. "Really, Mr. McQueen? You were in a place like this?" McQueen nodded. "Boys' Republic, actually, right here. I was 14 years old, angry at the world, convinced that life had dealt me a raw deal. I thought nobody would ever give me a chance." He handed the boy a pair of jeans. "But this place taught me that I could be somebody, that I could make something of myself. And I never forgot that." Bradley felt like he'd been punched in the gut. This wasn't a criminal operation. This wasn't mental illness. This was Steve McQueen, one of the biggest stars in the world, quietly giving back to the place that had saved him. All those bizarre contract demands, all those ridiculous requests for razors and jeans, they were never for him. They were for these kids. McQueen spent another hour at Boys' Republic, talking with the boys, joking with the staff, making sure every kid got what he needed. He didn't pose for pictures. He didn't bring reporters. He didn't publicize his visit. This was private, personal. This was Steve McQueen the man, not Steve McQueen the movie star. As McQueen loaded his empty truck and prepared to leave, Bradley felt sick to his stomach. He'd spent weeks convinced that McQueen was some kind of criminal, some greedy diva using his fame to scam the studios. Instead, he'd discovered something far more powerful. He'd discovered that Steve McQueen was using his leverage with the studios to help kids who had nothing, kids who reminded him of himself. The drive back to Hollywood was the longest hour of Bradley's life. Every assumption he'd made, every prejudice he'd held, every cynical thought about celebrity culture had been obliterated by what he'd witnessed. Steve McQueen wasn't the man Hollywood thought he was. He was better. When Bradley returned to Paramount, he walked straight into his boss's office and resigned. He couldn't work for a studio that had been ready to destroy a man for acts of kindness. When his boss asked why, Bradley told him the truth. Because I just learned that we've been calling a hero a villain, and I can't be part of that anymore. Word of what Bradley discovered spread quietly through Hollywood, but not in the gossip columns or trade papers. It spread among the people who mattered, the executives who made the real decisions. The bizarre contract demands stopped being seen as eccentricity or greed. They became something else entirely. They became acts of compassion that nobody was supposed to see. Steve McQueen never spoke publicly about his visits to Boys Republic. He never used his charity work for publicity. When reporters asked about his unusual contract writers, he would just smile that crooked smile and say, "A man's got to have his priorities." The studios stopped questioning his demands. If Steve McQueen wanted 500 razors, he got 500 razors, no questions asked. Years later, when McQueen died of cancer in 1980, Boys Republic received an anonymous donation of $1 million. The money came with a note that simply said, "For the boys who remind us that everybody deserves a second chance." The real Steve McQueen wasn't the tough guy he played on screen. He wasn't the rebellious loner that Hollywood had marketed. He was a man who never forgot where he came from, who used his success to lift up kids who were exactly where he used to be. The King of Cool understood something that his critics never did. True coolness isn't about how you present yourself to the world. It's about what you do when nobody's watching. Hollywood had called him a greedy diva, but Steve McQueen was something far more precious. He was proof that fame and fortune don't have to corrupt you. Sometimes they can be tools for quiet revolution, for changing lives one razor, one pair of jeans, one moment of kindness at a time. Have you ever been completely wrong about someone's true character?